We now turn our attention to the other big story we are tracking. TikTok plans to shut U.S. operations of its social media app used by 170 million Americans on Sunday, when a federal ban is set to take effect on 19th of January. Reports, however, do indicate that President-elect Donald Trump, whose term begins a day after the ban is set to be implemented, is considering issuing an executive order to suspend the enforcement of a shutdown for 60 or maybe 90 days, that is 2 to 3 months. And as per the law that will take effect on 19th of January, it will become illegal for marketplace entities like Apple's App Store and Google's Play Store, as well as cloud service providers like Oracle, to distribute, maintain or update or enable the distribution, maintenance or updating of a foreign adversary controlled application. So the question that we are asking today is that TikTok ban threat is looming large, and will Donald Trump halt this TikTok ban? And do migrating TikTok refugees pose a threat in terms of security concerns for the U.S.? And what happens to TikTok after the U.S. ban? There are many questions that are floating here and could have a larger implication of how Donald Trump's administration is really going to approach Chinese data threat as far as its entire 4-year term is concerned. And that would include semiconductors, chips, everything related to technology, because of how he deals with the TikTok ban. All right, let's get in our two guests joining me this evening. I have Jaspreet Bindra, who is founder of AI and Beyond, as well as Tech Whisperer. And I also have David Johnston, who is an American journalist and author. David, let me start with you. How do you read the situation? As things stand right now, 19th of January is when the ban is set to kick in. But most expect that maybe the moment President-elect Donald Trump starts his tenure, he could just overrule or put this ban in abeyance, if not completely overturn it.
Exactly, Corey. Gauri, let's remember that this began with Donald Trump, when he was president before, wanting to ban TikTok. This was his idea, and Congress, with both parties supporting it, passed this law. What did Donald say the other day? Well, now that I'm a star on TikTok, I don't want it to go. So, his concern clearly is not national security, which is what motivated Congress and motivated him, he says, originally. It's that this appeals to his ego because it helps make him a star. And it's important to understand that the law, as you pointed out, doesn't require them to shut down. It simply says no one can download the TikTok app, and TikTok may not update the technology, which means that over time it would slowly fade and fail to work.
Indeed. Jaspreet Bindra, you want to come in there in terms of how do you read the situation? Because this is just essentially about the political climate of different administrations, how they approach an issue which has security implications. But of course, there are larger political ambitions under which it will operate.
Sorry, what David said is right. Actually, the person who first introduced the idea of the TikTok ban was Donald Trump in his last administration. The concern is actually true. If you know, India banned TikTok a couple of years back, along with many other Chinese apps. And the concern is that the Chinese government could potentially have a backdoor into the data collected by TikTok, and therefore could misuse this data or abuse this data going further. So I think the concerns are real. Donald Trump now, has had a change in heart, and he wants the app to be back, possibly just to make people happy, possibly because, as David said, he's a star. But what he's also said, very interestingly, is that I want the app to be back, but the personal data of all Americans to be protected. Now, that is almost an impossible task, because it's the data and it's the algorithm, which is really the secret sauce of TikTok, which is driving the app. And the app is nothing without the data and the algorithm. And so how he pulls that off, or his people pull that off, I really don't know. And the last thing here is that actually Trump administration begins, if I'm not mistaken, 1 day after the ban. So the ban will actually take effect, whether Trump wants it or not. And what he'll have to figure out is how to reverse that 24 hours after the ban has taken effect.
Okay. So
let's
presidents,
see
of
what
course,
happens.
have the power to issue executive orders, and that's how policy actions at some time actually is expedited, and at other times it adds to political uncertainty. David Johnston, then let me ask you the question, which is, what is the Musk angle here? There's been a lot of talk about Musk may acquire the US operations. The Chinese have said no, they won't. Jaspreet has clarified that, if they're not selling the algorithm, it's worth nothing for Musk. But the fact is that Elon Musk's social media ambitions and aspirations are there for everyone to see, because it plays and feeds into his larger goals, doesn't it? So what's the Musk factor here?
So, Gauri, what we're about to see in America is in large part an abandonment of the historic democracy we've had and an oligarchy. And Donald Trump, who's always trying to please those who flatter him, clearly sees great benefit in Elon Musk and his money. He's poured $250 million into Trump getting back into office. And if Elon Musk wants ByteDance's company, TikTok, Trump is highly likely to do everything he can to help him achieve that goal. National security, which was at the core of why India banned TikTok, why the US Congress, in a bipartisan bill, said we're going to ban TikTok, that isn't of no concern to Donald Trump. He does not have the knowledge to appreciate national security issues, and his nature is he's a kleptocrat. Donald has spent his whole life cheating other people out of money, not paying his taxes, not fulfilling contract obligations, as a career white-collar criminal. So to Donald, where's the praise for me and where's the money? Not national security is what determines his conduct.
Okay. Jaspreet, finally, how do you see this case having a larger bearing in terms of how the Trump administration views tech threats coming from China?
Well, the whole hawkishness on China is actually a bipartisan movement in the US. So both the Republicans and the Democrats do want the screws tightened on China from a tech perspective and other perspectives. Also, if you look at the Trump administration and the kind of people that he has appointed around him, most of them are very hardcore China hawks. So I do not think that the pressure on China, whether through chips or many of the other trade or tariffs or any of the other measures actually getting changed, because it has bipartisan support and there are all these people who around him who kind of have this. But beyond what David said, the other thing about Donald Trump, as we have seen, is that he doesn't look at things strategically. He looks at things transactional. Even in TikTok, for him, it's a transaction. Maybe a transaction which has to do with Musk, or maybe there are supporters or lobbyists who are kind of who are influencing him, and so on. So from his perspective, everything that happens vis-a-vis China, he will look at it as a transaction by transaction rather than an overall holistic picture.
All right, let's leave it there. David Johnston, Jaspreet Bandra, really appreciate you joining me on a story which, as I said, has larger implications of how the US is going to see tech threats coming in as far as China is concerned. Whether it is semiconductors, whether it is AI, whether it is the chips that are coming in, all of that is going to be seen through the prism of how Donald Trump evaluates the TikTok ban threat.